Mr. Baez, you may proceed.
Sir, may it please the court, Mr. Rainer? Good afternoon, Mr. Bloise.
Good afternoon, Counselor.
I want to start back with the Pontiac Sunfire when it first arrived. The first thing that you did is do an external visual, did you not?
Yes, the first things that I did was exterior inspection of the exterior of the vehicle. Yes, correct.
And then subsequent to that, what you would do is do an internal inspection.
Correct.
In plain English, look inside the car.
Correct.
Okay. And that would include the passenger side?
Correct.
The driver's side?
Correct.
The back seat?
Correct.
And the trunk?
Correct.
Now, I heard you testify earlier that you, upon opening the door of the car, you smelled decomposition.
That is correct.
And you specifically use the word decomposition because you don't know if it's human or non-human, correct?
Correct. What I used was a decomposition.
Okay. And that just basically means something is decomposing.
Yes.
Okay. And that could be animals?
Yes.
That could be meats?
Yes.
And that also, can also be human?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you also testified about being able to smell various bodies at various stages of decomposition.
Correct.
And that would include basic stages of decomposition, would it not?
Yes.
And these are in various environments.
Correct.
Various environments, I'm sorry.
Various.
Now, one of the common things that you see when you see a decomposing body are maggots.
Yes, depend of the stage of the body at that time. When it's full, completely decomposed, yes.
And depending on the stage of decomposition, you would see anywhere from thousands of maggots to even hundreds of thousands of maggots, would you not?
Yes.
Not to say that you would sit there and count them, but you could photograph them and you'd be able to see that, correct?
Yes, it's possible.
And this would also include puparia, that basically when the maggots hatch, they're shells.
Yes, but in that particular question or statement that you are doing right now, that will not be my expertise. I know that human decomposition is in different stage, but talking about that specific topic, it is not my expertise.
I understand.
I don't feel confidence talking about that specific topic.
I understand. And I only want to ask you about things that you've seen in your experience visually. I'm not going to ask you to identify any entomology or any entomological evidence, okay?
Thank you, Counselor.
No problem. All right, now, sir, you also testified that you've gone many times to medical examiners' offices to take fingerprints of decomposing bodies and things like that.
Yes.
However, would you not agree that when you go there, what you mainly smell is formaldehyde, the chemical?
Yes.
Okay. You don't really know you're smelling, you just smell it, do you not?
Just smell, yeah.
And that's what medical examiners use to preserve tissue.
Yes, but in different areas. Because when I go to, in this case, take a fingerprints of any decomposed body, it is a different area of the medical examiner. So most likely, there's no any kind of chemicals in that area, just the body inside the freezer.
but when you go into any medical examiner's office or any medical examiner's area, that smell is everywhere, is it not?
It's correct.
Okay. And you also smell fecal matter as opposed when a body is decomposing, do you not?
Yes.
And those are different sources of smell, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly what comes from what.
Well, it depends. Once again, if I'm doing fingerprints on decomposed body, I know that smell from a decomposed body. It is, because that smell is unique. For instance, when I have my first case with a decomposed body in Puerto Rico, that smell, when you smell it, you will never forget that smell. So that is, I want to differentiate between the chemicals that you're talking about using at the medical examiner's office, and then, with the dead body, in a stage of full decomposition state is completely different. So it's unique, and in my personal professional opinion, you will never forget that smell once you have that experience in your life.
And also, sir, there is different smells with different stages of decomposition. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, the only different is the odor when start to do the decomposes smell, but a week, I can say that. But when he's a full decomposition, is very a strong smell.
Mr. Bloise, if you
Yes.
can answer my question, sir, please.
I'm sorry, yeah.
My question is, at different stages of decomposition, you have different smells, do you not? For example, let me expand upon that. For example, once a body's orifices are exposed, that smell is different than that of a newly deceased body that just began to decompose. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree with that, yes.
Okay. Now, you also testified about the gas gauge in the car.
Correct.
However, you didn't take the car out for a spin, did you?
No.
Okay, so you don't know if after driving it a certain period of time, that gas gauge just sinks down.
No.
Okay. And all you can testify is that you put gas in the gas tank and it rose up a little bit.
Correct.
Now, the air freshener sheets that you got, you also talked about, actually, let me ask you this. Were you given any information about that car prior to you receiving it?
The only information that I obtained from the detective is that the vehicle was related with a missing child.
Okay. So you were not informed that Cindy Anthony had put those air fresheners in there?
No.
You were not informed that she sprayed the entire car with Febreze?
No.
And the dry leaves that you found underneath the chassis and underneath the car, they're of no forensic value, were they not?
Depends. If we have a standard to compare with, that will be a forensic value for that piece of evidence.
But as far as you know in the work you've done, those leaves, those dry leaves, have no forensic value to this case.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to any response will be based on your statement.
Not necessarily, Judge.
Sustain.
Were those dry leaves sent out anywhere for analysis?
My best recollection, I was submitted to a lab.
And did you receive any results that may have assisted in this investigation?
Not to my best recollection, no.
Now, as part of your examination, you then began to focus on the trunk, did you not?
Not necessarily, just
After the inspection?
exterior, after, yes.
Yes, sorry.
All right, no problem.
Now, part of your inspection is you did a thorough search of the trunk of the car.
Correct.
And part of that thorough search is going through there with tweezers and pulling out hairs.
After I remove the liner, yes.
Okay. And in addition to that, you also did vacuumings.
Correct.
And the vacuuming of the car, when I say that, I don't mean you're vacuuming to clean the car, right?
Correct.
It's a handheld device that has a filter that catches anything that would catch any evidence that you might have.
That is correct.
And that's the purpose of it, because it would be even more thorough than than inspector looking at it through the naked eye.
That's correct, yes.
And pick up the most minute articles that might be in that trunk.
Correct.
Now, in addition to that, you use what's called an alternate light source, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And what this does is this gives different reflections, so you might identify stains in the trunk of the car.
Yes.
Doesn't necessarily mean that those stains are of forensic value, but it would be exactly where you may want to concentrate on.
Correct.
For example, if you have a bed sheet and you're looking for a speck of blood, the alternate light source would be able to help you find that that's not observable to the naked eye.
Correct.
So when you did that, you found a portion of the car that had a stain, did you not?
Yes.
And it's not uncommon to find stains in trunks of cars, are they?
It is possible that we found some stains, yes.
Right. It's fairly common that everybody's got trunks, they throw things in there and sometimes they stain their trunk, right?
It is possible.
Okay. Fairly common though, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now that you've been able to identify a specific stain, the next thing you do is you utilize a product called Blue Star.
Yes, I use a chemical that we call Blue Star.
Now, Blue Star is similar to luminol, but it's not luminol, right?
Correct.
In fact, Blue Star is one of the leading forensic tools to help you identify blood.
Correct.
And this is important, obviously, in a case like this, because if you have blood in the trunk of a car, that would certainly be important.
Correct.
And what Blue Star does on top of things is that luminol does not, is it actually exposes the stain for a longer period of time.
Correct.
And it's even better than luminol, because at certain times, there's certain items that it would identify that luminol does not.
Correct.
And it also limits the false positives, meaning it's a banana stain instead of a blood stain.
That is correct.
Now, when you sprayed the stain area with Blue Star, tell the jury what the results were.
Negative results.
Now, subsequent to this, you did what is called a presumptive test for that stain, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And this is taking it a step further, that you have basically a forensic tool that will give you, I'm trying to break this down a little bit more plain English, is it will give you a preliminary result of whether that's blood or not.
That is correct.
And tell the jury what the presumptive test told you.
When I performed the presumptive test on those specific areas that I observed what appears to be a blood, negative results.
And finally, while we're dealing with that stain, you can take things a step further and swab them for DNA.
That is correct.
And you actually did that in this case. Even though the blue star was negative, and even though the presumptive test was negative, you took it a step further and were even more thorough and swabbed it for DNA.
Part of the protocol is to collect swab samples from the area, yes.
And are you aware of what those results are?
No, I did not.
Okay. You wouldn't have received the results back from the lab as to what the DNA results were of that
You're
stain?
talking about the swab samples?
Yes.
Your Honor, I object. He's asking for a response.
Sustain.
Hearsay.
We'll come back to that. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the hairs in the trunk. You initially found, upon your first inspection, how many hairs, sir? And please feel free to refer to your report and any notes that you may have.
Hairs by hand, in total,
Correct.
12.
Okay.
And
Let me stop you there for a second. We're gonna take this one step at a time. When did you first collect the first set of hairs?
that was collected in July 17, 2008. That will be the tag number H52025 that was found in the front edge of the vehicle. That was the first one.
Okay. Now, these hairs are of multiple sizes, are they not? Lengths, I should say.
But that one in particular was long. The other one that I talked about in Q12 was pointer 12. I can say a little longer too, but the other ones I can't say the size.
They were different sizes and colors, were they not?
I can say I can't testify about that because I don't know.
From what you observed, sir.
Well, what I observed on the first hair, yes, I can say is a longer. In Q12, which is, a pointer number 12, which was Q12 when I submitted to the lab. Yes, I can say that because I observed that was a long hair, both. But the other ones is very hard to tell because was collected by the vacuum. I don't know if those hairs was inside the dirt. I can't say that.
And how many hairs did you select individually, not from the vacuum?
I said before 12 by hands.
How many? 4?
12.
12 by hand. Okay.
Yes.
And some of them were dark brown.
I don't remember right now the
Okay.
color.
Some of them, do you remember if some were blonde?
Your Honor, I'm going to.
I don't remember.
Already indicated he doesn't recall this time.
Sustain.
You also found animal hair in the trunk of the car, did you not?
No, I can't say that. I don't know if there's animals or not. No.
We'll get back to that in a few, but let me ask you this. Now, you're experienced in trace recovery, are you not?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
You're experienced in trace recovery, are you not, sir?
I have some experience, trace, yes, evidence.
And what that means for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury is recovery of evidence that is trace evidence, the minute amounts of evidence. Very
Yeah.
small pieces, which would include hairs,
Could be, yes.
textile fibers, and a whole array of different things.
Yes,
Now, as part of your job, of course, you don't want to contaminate anything that you're inspecting, right?
correct.
And you would then wear a white jumpsuit?
Correct, Tyvek.
And that's what you
Tyvek.
did in this case.
Correct, Tyvek and hairnets, and yes, and gloves.
I'm getting to that. You'll also wear a hairnet so none of your hair gets in the trunk of that car.
Correct.
And gloves so none of your DNA would get in that car as well.
Correct.
And oftentimes you'll even wear a mask.
Yes.
I noticed you got a little shrubbery there. All right, so this is all to protect further contamination of the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And you take all of these precautions because hair is one of the easiest things that shed on a human being.
Yes.
In fact, we shed hundreds of hairs every day.
Yes, I say so, yes.
And that's what assists you in your job.
Correct.
And to find hairs in the trunk of the car is fairly common.
I don't say that it's very common.
Okay, let's explore that. I take a sweater off, I throw that in the trunk of the car. Is it possible a hair will transfer from that to the car?
Well, in that kind of examples that you gave me to me, Counselor, yes, it's possible.
If I have clothing or a backpack and I have hair on the backpack, I put it in the trunk of the car, that will transfer hair.
It's possible, yes.
And this car is how old?
I'm sorry again?
The car that you inspected, sir, how old is it?
I believe it's 98.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was over 10 years old when you inspected it.
Yes.
And over 10 years, there's going to be quite a bit of trace evidence that might be in that car.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to asking what to speculate.
Sustain.
Have you ever inspected older cars?
Object to the relevance.
I think it is.
Overrule as to that question. Question calls for a yes or no answer.
Sometimes.
You sometimes.
Depends what you use the definition of old cars means.
Cars that are 10 years or older.
Yes.
Okay. And those are usually much more dirty than a car that's maybe a year old.
Depends the owner.
But generally speaking, wouldn't you agree?
I agree, but depend of the owner.
All right. Now, did you send each and every single hair to be tested for mitochondrial DNA?
Yes. My best recollection, yes.
So it's your testimony that every single one of these hairs was tested for mitochondrial DNA?
I sent it to the lab, but I can't say that every single one was tested by mitochondrial DNA. I can't say that. I just submitted to the evidence to the lab, but the decision of what kind of a specific test will be run in that specific item, that is not my decision, it's the decision of the lab.
And for the benefit of the jury, the mitochondrial DNA is the type of DNA that's generally used when identifying hair.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. It's outside the stated expertise of the witness.
Sustain unless there's a foundation laid.
You're aware what you actually send pieces of evidence to labs all the time, do you not, sir?
Yes.
And you're aware, and I'm not asking you to be a DNA, if you're a DNA expert, but you're aware of which pieces of evidence are generally sent to which departments of the lab, are you not?
Correct.
Like you would send a bullet to ballistics.
Correct.
Like you would send a fingerprint or a latent print to an analyst that would look at fingerprints.
Correct.
And you would send hair towards mitochondrial DNA as opposed to nuclear DNA.
Once again, when I submit hair, my explanation in the sentence is for DNA. Whether or not about the mitochondrial DNA is not my decision. The only things that I put in my submission is DNA. That specific term, mitochondrial DNA, it is not my decision to make that determination to run that particular piece of evidence and that particular DNA for mitochondrial DNA. That will be by the lab, not by me.
All right. Investigator Bloise, let's go back to the hairs. You got 12 by hand,
Yes.
correct? And then you got how many by the vacuum?
May I
Absolutely,
check
sir.
notes? 11 vacuums.
So now you have a total of 20, oh my goodness, 23.
Yeah, approximately, yes.
All right, and subsequent, and that's after inspecting the car how many times?
The vehicle I inspected about 12 times. Well, 12 times, yes, about 12 times I inspected the vehicle.
So that vehicle, and particularly the trunk and its liner, were searched top to bottom.
I can say that I searched the trunk I did the best I can, but I think that I inspected very well the trunk of the vehicle, yes.
You did a very thorough job, sir.
Yes, yeah.
And in fact, this car is probably the most thorough you've been on any car.
I'm telling you right now, based on my experience, I have previous vehicles that I have to inspect it, that I have to spend days. This is not the only car that I inspected.
I'm not saying it's the first time you've ever searched a car
Okay.
that often, but it's right up there with the most amount of times you've ever searched a car.
The time, yes,
Okay.
I agree with that.
And subsequent to all of this, you were also present when the defense inspected the car.
Yes, in one occasion, yes.
And we contracted Dr. Henry Lee, did we not?
Object and ask-
Sustain. Just a second, the court reporter. Okay. Until I tell you to proceed, when the court reporter goes over there, she has to sit down, reconnect her machine, and put her headphones on. She cannot take down while she's moving. Are you ready, Madam Court Reporter? Ms. Burdick?
I understand, Your Honor. Move to strike the question from the record.
Okay. I'm not going to strike it from the record, but I will advise the jury to disregard the last question. Okay, you may continue, Mr. Baez.
Yes, sir, thank you. Mr. Bloise, the defense went and inspected the car.
Yes,
And during the defense inspection, that consisted of the trunk liner.
correct.
And while inspecting the trunk liner, additional hairs were found.
That is correct.
And you collected these hairs
Correct.
and you submitted them as evidence.
Correct.
And there was also on the trunk liner certain animal hairs that were pointed out as well.
I don't have any recollections about the animal hairs on the trunk.
Did you not take notes, sir?
Yes, I did.
Do you have those notes with you?
No, I destroyed the notes. This is my notes.
You're referring to your report,
My report, this is my notes.
but you destroyed the notes from which you wrote that report?
Correct, and based on the legal bulletin that we have at the sheriff's office,
Sir, just answer the question if you can. All right.
yes,
Now, you wrote this report that, and I know you've written multiple reports, but the report relating to the car and the vehicle inspection was written January 1st of 2009.
correct.
And this was approximately 6 months after you had inspected the vehicle.
That was let me explain that to clarify that.
Answer the question, and then you can explain.
Yes.
Okay.
May I explain?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Consuelo. That specific day is the date that my supervisor review my report, and then that is the date that he signed it for, after he reviewed my report. But all my reports that we have is 43 pages, and is made by activity log investigation is by day. So what he did is always, as a procedure, the supervisor review the report and sign the date that he reviewed the report.
So let's see if I understand your answer correctly. So what you're saying is you wrote the report, it just wasn't reviewed until 6 months later.
Yes, he reviewed it that date that is signed by my supervisor, which is 1st January 2009. I'm sorry. I was January the 1st, 2009.
Now, you testified on direct about some garbage that you received as evidence, did you not?
Garbage. I don't recall the
Garbage that was turned over to you?
Oh, you're talking about in my report?
Yeah.
Yes, trash, yes.
Trash, garbage, sorry.
Trash, yes.
Okay, so you had some trash that was given to you, correct?
Correct.
And this was moist garbage, was it not?
Trash, yes, moist.
Moist trash, okay. You prefer the term trash?
Yes, because I put that in my report, trash, and I would like to use trash in my report.
All right.
I try to be accurate in my testimony here, because I use trash, and I would like to use trash.
That's okay, we'll talk trash.
Okay.
Now, in this trash, there were multiple packages of food.
Yes.
I'm going to object. This is outside the limited scope of direct at this point.
Overall,
Now, on page 23 and 24 of your report, there are 37 items of garbage, or sorry, trash, that was recovered and listed as evidence, was it not?
Correct.
Okay. And rather than read them all into the record, I'd like to point out a couple of items for you, if I may.
Go ahead.
There was a bottle with chewing tobacco spit in it.
What number is? Please,
sure.
Counselor, if you help me.
Sure. It's not in here, is it, sir? Can you look at it from 1 to 37 and see if you can identify a bottle with chewing tobacco spit in it?
The only things in the page 23 that I found, which is number 5, is an empty circular metal box, Copenhagen tobacco, with number SLN8178. That is related with tobacco. I don't see anything spit over there. Let me see. In page 24. Item 13, Counselor, empty crystal light bottle, 60 ounce, proof of purchases number 31 600-24701
And
with brown liquid.
that's the brown liquid.
Yes, the brown liquid.
Did that appear to be chewing tobacco spit?
I can't say that. It's very hard to tell that.
Okay. There were also other packages of cheese.
Yes.
In fact, 3 boxes of Velveeta cheese.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is outside the scope of direct. I have not talked to this witness at all about.
My friend did.
I did not, only with Awilda McBride.
With this witness?
Not yet.
Let me think for a second. You're correct. Sustain.
I'll move on, Judge. I thought we went into that area, but if that's what the court's
No, I was
recollection.
the other witness that identified the photograph that received the trash out of the pain. So
Sure.
state is correct.
Your Honor, I'll reserve my other questions for this witness as we go into those other areas.
Okay.
Thank you, Investigator Bloise. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Counselor.
Any redirect as to those areas?
Just a few. Investigator Bloise, I wanted to clarify when you referred to the negative results as a consequence of using Blue Star on either the interior or the trunk of that vehicle. What are the negative results for?
For blood.
Negative for blood. Okay. When you are inspecting a vehicle or preserving evidence, you take notes, handwritten notes on a notepad, piece of paper. How do you accomplish the recording of what you are doing and when you are doing it?
Yeah, handwriting, a piece of paper, and in the activity log, yes.
Okay. After you complete your processing of whether it be a vehicle or any other item of evidence, do you then take those notes and create a report from your notes?
That is correct.
Okay. And then at that point, once your report is created, is when you destroy the notes pursuant to Orange County Sheriff's Office policy.
Correct.
What's the objection?
Yes. 1, it's leading. 2, the answer relies on hearsay.
As the hearsay overrule as to lead and sustain, rephrase your question.
Once you have written a report from your notes, what happens to the notes?
With the notes, as soon as I finish my report, I destroy the notes based on Legal Bulletin 97-09 made by the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Based on this legal decision, and then I destroy the notes.
You had indicated during cross-examination that there are universal precautions taken to prevent cross-contamination of evidence. When Mr. Baez referred to a defense inspection of the vehicle, did those individuals inspecting take those precautions?
By the defense?
Yes.
Could say yes.
Did they wear hairnets?
Not specifically a hairnets, just gloves, but no hairnets.
Just gloves?
Correct.
Based upon the experience that you have told us about, do you have an opinion as to whether or not the odor that you smelled in the car was of a particular type of decomposition?
Correct.
Do you have an opinion?
The opinion, yes, a human decomposition.
Objection.
What's the objection?
Proper predicate. This witness isn't qualified to give a opinion. He's not an expert in the field of human decomposition.
Objection overruled. He may answer the question.
Right. Based upon the experience that you've described, do you have an opinion as to whether or not the smell that you smelled in the vehicle was of a particular type of decomposition?
Correct. Based on my 23 years experience and sometimes 30 or 40 times to dealing with fully decomposed body, yes, I can determine. Professionally speaking, my opinion is that it was the smell of human decomposition.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I wanted to follow up with.
Recrossing to those areas and those areas alone.
Yes, sir. The notes that are since destroyed could never be inspected by the defense, could they?
No.
And you can't testify that there are things in your notes that are not in your report, can you?
Once again, Counselor and members of the jury, everything that is reflected in this report is accurate to my handwriting.
My question was, sir, because you don't have the notes, you can't testify that everything in that report was what's written in your notes.
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled. He can answer it one more time.
Again, everything that I did with my handwriting notes is reflected in this report.
It's not the question I asked you, sir. I said you can't testify because you don't have your notes that everything that you had in your notes made it to your report.
Objection asked and answered.
Now, I just want to be clear. During cross-examination, we were clear that you used the word decomposition, correct?
Correct.
And you also testified that the reason you chose that word was because you couldn't determine which type of decomposition it was. Do you remember testifying to that?
Correct, but I used that terminology in a simple way, decomposition. That was my intention when I put that in my report.
Correct. And when I asked you that that's because there are different types of decomposition, you answered, that's correct.
Correct.
And that's why you did not specify human decomposition, correct?
It's possible, correct.
However, when Ms. Jane Burdick comes up and does redirect, it's now human decomposition.
Yes, because she asked me about based on my experience, then I can say on my experience, can say that.
And when you testified earlier about decomposition, you weren't talking about your experience.
Because they don't ask me that question.
But you weren't talking about your experience, is my question.
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Or were you talking about someone else's experience, sir?
Objection argumentative asked and answered.
Sustained.
Were you referring to someone else's opinion?
Your Honor, objection. Relevance.
Overruled as to relevance.
Or are you referring to someone else's opinion?
Not my opinion.
Your opinion. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Counselor.
May the witness be excused, subject to recall.
You may. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You excused.
Thank you.